Megan, how do you feel about the current state of the Republican Party?
Depressed,
Yeah.
frustrated, like hopeful that they're going to find some way to turn it around, because if we don't, what are we left with? It's
Yeah.
like, I don't, I'm a registered independent, and I have been for the last 20 years. But
Okay.
given the two-party system, it's clear to me that the Republicans need to win. And even now, with them in disarray, I'm like, oh, it's awful. And I have voted for Democrats for president in the past, but I look over at that team and they want to chop off young boys' penises. So it's a no,
Right.
So you kind of are left more black-pilled these days, I think, where you're like, F these guys. I don't want to vote for either one of these guys, because everybody disappoints you. And it really does feel more than ever like the uniparty these days, where it's like on certain issues, for example, foreign excursions, they're the same. And, big pharma, they're the same. And you look at what's happening at, them taking control over at HHS too, and some of the RFKJ initiatives, they're the same. It's like big money is what controls everything in Washington. And so like you can make a little dent here and there, and you can feel hopeful here and there. But in the end, is there much to feel hopeful about? I got to be honest, I'm not feeling that way these days.
I'm not hopeful. Like when Trump was on the campaign trail, he was talking about draining the swamp. Did you think it was going to be Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene and now Boebert?
Yeah. I never believed he was going to drain the swamp. That like, I didn't believe most of Trump's promises. I don't believe most of these politicians, because I've just seen too many of them come and go. It's, I always liken the media position to kind of like the Queen of England, I guess now the King. We're like, but the Queen was there. She was on the throne for all those decades. And like the prime ministers came and went and she remained. And so I think overall that time she amassed a bit of knowledge about like who to believe, what kind of nonsense would be spoken to her, and so on. And I think that's ideally the way you are as a member of the media. You can't get too enthralled with any one of these guys, because they will exit stage left at some point and you'll still be there trying to maintain a relationship with your audience. So I never believed that stuff about Trump and the swamp. I did believe that he'd close the border, and he did. I did believe that he would do something about the trans insanity, and he did. And I did believe that he absolutely would not get us into a foreign war, and he did. So it was a massive betrayal. But I have to be honest, I didn't expect the corruption to be quite as, widespread as it's been, and like the self-dealing and the lining of his and his family's pockets. Like that's been a little shocking.
Right. Talking
and
billions
I just
of
didn't
dollars.
expect Trump to be so disrespectful of his base.
Right. Well, you know what, Megan? I got to push back a little bit, because Trump didn't take a salary while he's president. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. I mean, you look at like across the board of the Trump family. I've never seen a family get so rich off of a presidency.
Right.
And it happened at the same time as we now have a Supreme Court ruling that basically says any official act he takes while in the White House is protected.
Right.
And those two things are, seem to be giving him some sort of a hall pass that could very much get abused. I don't want to, say he's crossed the line legally, because I actually haven't taken a close look at that. But, he's done a lot that pushes it right up to the line. And I just don't think we want our presidents or their families getting rich off of the presidency. And I really want to know more about all these trades that are happening on Iran right before he makes the announcements. Like, this is not the way it's supposed to be. Even one of those would have caused a massive scandal 12, 13 years ago. We shouldn't be so far afield that like these obvious ethical questions get skirted past with just a shoulder shrug, because it does matter.
Yeah. Right. Are you shocked at how loyal the MAGA base is to Trump? There's no pushback whatsoever. And then they attack people like us and you and everybody else that's being objective about the situation?
Not shocked. Not shocked. No, I've seen, the Fifth Avenue rule implemented many times with Trump. Of course, I was on the receiving end of a lot of very pointed Trump attacks 10 years ago. And everybody thought, these attacks, he's calling her a bimbo. She's the #1 rated show on Fox News. That's going to drive his numbers down. It did the opposite. His base really is his. And I think it's disrespectful to call them cult members, but they do have the same kind of loyalty as that, where it's like, in Trump we trust. and he can do no wrong. And I get that. You know, they've been burned by a lot of other politicians. They felt like Trump got them at a time when everybody was ignoring them. They feel a deep sense of loyalty. And so I'm not surprised. I do, however, think it's interesting that the size of that, what's now MAGA, I don't even know, like MAGA is not what it was. MAGA is now this very, very small group of Trump diehard loyalists who have to love Mark Levin. And so that's by definition an increasingly tiny group.
Right.
And they've upper limited, basically, thanks to Trump's own definition of his followers. And it's a small group. So I guess I've been surprised to see how quickly it's shrunk down to something less formidable by far than it used to be.
Yeah, when I look at the Republican Party, I thought we had learned our lesson with the prior administration of George Bush. But now that I look at Trump, I see George Bush 2.0, the money he's made, the new war he started, and there's absolutely no pushback. It's like his base is the same people that supported the Iraq war, and it's like they haven't learned their lesson.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's stunning to me that the people who voted for the man who said over and over, not only no new wars, but no war with Iran, no Middle East wars, and specifically over and over said Iran, and also said the Democrats are going to get us into a war with Iran.
Yes, he
like,
did. Yeah.
That the people who voted for him, that was not a small thing. That was not a throwaway line. That was a massive part of his campaigning and his promising, that those people on a dime were like, yes, we're pro war with Iran. Yes, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We all know that that's a lie. It's so obvious that that's a lie to get us into this conflict, that they were not on the verge of developing a nuclear weapon. I mean, truly, you don't have to do a lot of fact checking to figure that out. Trump's own intelligence agency said they're not. They're nowhere close. The IAEA, there was no one other than Israel saying they're on the verge, and they'd been saying it for years. So like, you'd really have to be willing to delude yourself to go along with that. But so it's been shocking to see how many people to whom that seemed to be important just immediately pivot to, no, it's no longer. And same on Epstein. Like, it's been shocking to see the same group that's been like, we need answers on Epstein. There's a cabal that gets protected. You know, finally, Trump's going to get to the bottom of it. As soon as Trump shocked us all by coming out and saying, Epstein, who cares about Epstein? They all turned on, yeah, who cares?
Yeah.
And there were guys
Epstein's
like you and like me and other, like we do still care. That some of us do still care.
Yeah. Do you think Thomas Massey's loss proves that the Republican base does not care about holding pedophiles accountable?
Yeah, that's interesting. I just don't think that was front of mind. What I think that it was the Israel lobby that got Thomas Massey defeated. And I think that voters of Kentucky were probably moved by the massive ad campaign that was unleashed against them. You know, the Israel crowd moved in, AIPAC and the Republican Jewish Coalition and Miriam Adelson and, you know, all these big Jewish billionaires who were not keeping it secret that they were funneling money into this campaign, creating ads that made Thomas Massey look like a sex pest, that made him look like he was against Trump on virtually everything, whereas he voted with Trump, I think, 91% of the time. So, I mean, overwhelmingly positive, but on a couple things, obviously was true to himself, you know, as he had been all along, and that hadn't been a problem with the voters at any time prior. So I think that money went a long way, and people are living their lives. They're not like us who are like in the news all the time, following the latest developments. They're working, they're raising their families. They don't have the time to do that much with the news. So they can be misled by these ubiquitous ads telling you everywhere what a turncoat Massey is. Then he's turned Democrat now. And, you know, it wasn't true. And there was an agenda behind it. And those donors got their way. So I don't know if it was about the pedophile thing, but I definitely was about the Israel thing.
Do you, how should I ask this? I think the Massey situation exposes what kind of leader Trump is. Tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. It looks like to me as a leader, instead of placing around him people with constructive criticism, instead he places sycophants around him instead. That's what I think Trump is as a leader. What do you think?
100%. I completely agree with that. And that's how he's always been. And that's why the ones who last are the ones who are the most loyal. And I have to say, it's unfortunate because it's spreading. It's one thing to make your inner circle that way. That I don't think that's what creates a great leader. I do think you should hear dissenting points of view. But it's another thing to then take that beyond your inner circle and require it of everyone in your party and their representatives. That there can be no dissent. Look at how Trump has turned, for example, on Tucker. I mean, obviously I'm in there too, but Tucker was very close with Trump, much closer than I ever have been, and campaigned for Trump and was actually a very critical voice in support of Trump. And the only thing he was really pushing Trump on, where they were split, was don't go to war with Iran. Please don't do the bombing campaign in June. He got overruled. He stayed loyal to the president. And then please don't launch this war. This is an Israel war. Don't do it. And Trump heard him out. To his credit, Trump did allow that, POV to come into the Oval Office, and he overruled him. And then Tucker was very critical of it, but wasn't saying, now we need to completely go against Trump. Now Trump's wrong on everything. He was very critical on Israel. And Trump completely wrote him off as though he were public enemy number one, and continues to do that. And I just think it makes no sense. It's so short-sighted. You can have critics. It was Ronald Reagan, I think, who said, if somebody disagrees with you on 10% of the time, or maybe it's 20% of the time and agrees with you 80% of the time, then that's an 80% friend. It's not a 20% enemy. It's an 80% friend. Focus on the stuff that you agree on, build coalitions, use people, if you're a politician, for what you can. And he should be using Tucker. There's no valid outcome to alienating a guy as powerful as that for Trump, but he just requires absolute loyalty on every issue. He doesn't care. He doesn't care how loyal you've been. He doesn't care what you've done for him. I could say the same about Alex Jones, who backed Trump completely in 15 and 16 when nobody wanted Trump in the Republican Party.
Right.
And it was like just on a dime. Loyalty only goes one way with Donald Trump, and it's toward him. He will never show it toward you.